When you discovered the law of attraction, you started to believe anything was possible. Life got better, much better. Now you want more, but it's not working. That's where the Manifest It Now show comes in. If you've been waiting for someone who can teach you the practical application to manifest quicker and easier while having more, turn the volume up, because the dynamic duo, Cassie Parks and Ginny Gane, are ready to teach you how to live the law of attraction like they do. It's time to laugh and learn.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Manifest It Now. I'm here with Cassie Parks.
And I'm here with Ginny Gane.
And our topic for today is talking about the difference between howing it and inspiration. We get a lot of questions on this.
We do. And I know a lot of the time this comes up for you guys when you're in the moment. I know because it comes up for my clients and we work through it all the time. Not all the time, but it's something that you have to learn bigger and bigger and bigger. Even I still learn it. Like Jenny and I just had a great discussion even before about, well, how did you know that was inspiration?
Isn't that howing it? You're like, no, this is not howing it. I'm like, oh, we need to talk about this.
So I love it because I also love growth and depth. And this is one of those things in LOA that is not just like, there's not a single answer. It's an evolution, and it's about how it feels, like everything is. And I'm just going to stop talking because it's going to be awesome to talk about it. I'll get going.
What are you
and I want to know
about,
what you're.
Cass?
I was going to ask you because I always go first. What are you excited about?
I'm excited about one of the women in our Truth Tribe. So we're in the middle of an abundance module, and she posted today that she just paid off her mortgage. And I'm like, yes. So we had a huge celebration.
Yay.
There's so many things coming up, and people getting raises and bonuses, and we're doing abundance in all sorts of ways, not just money, but it's super fun when it comes in that way too. So that is what is exciting for me.
It is so fun. I love that. I'm excited about abundance in all the ways, like in the growth, in the shifting, in my love has a new opportunity that she's taking. And so we're settling into that and going through the whole process of, it's just different. And it's fun because it makes you think different. It's abundance of time because now she's working from home all the time, which during quarantine she worked from home a lot, but there's still a portion of her job that requires her to go 2 hours away. And oftentimes leaving at 4:30 in the morning. So, also celebrating abundance of sleep for her and us not getting, and just not that is that bad, but it's the abundance of, like being able to keep things the same a little bit. Cause it's not like that was super bad, but it just threw off routine. It makes the routine different. And so I'm excited in this time to feel like we get to kind of settle into a new routine and create a new routine because she has this opportunity to work from home that meets a lot of criteria and is just awesome. Abundance of miles saved on our cars, just all the things, right?
Yeah.
You can just start adding it up, and it's really fun to see it in that way too. So
Yeah.
I'm excited.
I feel when you were saying that, it's something coming up around like the feeling of fall coming up too, to me is like settling, and it's, so cozy. It's my favorite season. And it is that feeling of like pulling back a little bit. I guess we kind of have been in a bit of a pullback phase kind of during the pandemic, but there's something different about that. And I like that feeling. It feels like perfect timing for that.
Absolutely.
Well.
Well, I think it's going to feel it is perfect timing. And I think, I've thought about that too, because we have some like fall projects we're going to finish painting, but it's almost like it matches the energy of what usually happens in fall is that we pull back. So as things are pulled back, it's going to feel a little bit better. Just because it's a little more familiar. And there's nothing wrong with when we're growing and expanding, and we've talked about that in terms of pandemic, like having that familiar place to come back to is great too, because it helps you grow more. So I'm excited about fall too.
I want to quickly just mention, because you inspired me, this idea of our lives flowing in alignment with the bigger energy of whatever's going on in the world. Because something that happens when you make alignment your priority, or you make living your truth or living your future self the priority, and you're focused on that and you're creating that every day, there's stuff that there's details that we don't see that are a part of the bigger picture that end up working out better for you. Like, these are not things we are trying to manifest at all. But it's this idea of living in harmony with the natural flow of life. And a few things have happened or come to my attention with clients, but one of the biggest things that I recognized, or looking back in my own life, was when Lisa and I were getting married and had set that date. There was, it happened quicker than we thought, than we had originally planned, within the 6 months for different immigration purpose times. And looking back now, I had gotten my green card right before everything shut down. And not that I could go anywhere anyways, but that was part of it was a closure, some sort of like finishedness that felt really good. It really allowed me to settle and relax to another level, having that, and had not all those other pieces, and we're going back years now, who knows when this timing, all the details falling into place. But that is one way that you feel supported by the universe, and you feel that things are working out for you in that bigger picture.
We totally talked about that. And also like the trusting when you're not, this is great lead in too for this topic, I'm engaged and I had zero inclination at the end of the year to like plan a wedding. It was sort of funny because my cousin got engaged like 5 days later, and they had like the photographers set up the engagement. There was a huge party planned like the next night, and then she like had the date picked within like 2 weeks, and like all of these things. And I felt zero like, that should be me. And I just wasn't interested in planning. And Jenny and I were talking about this the other day, and both how her and Lisa got married like a little quicker, and that was perfect, and how like I had zero interest in any sort of plan. And the reason is because it wouldn't have happened. I mean, it could have happened in a different way, but to me, like, I know myself, if I had made this huge plan and then it didn't happen, that wouldn't feel good.
Yes.
And so the fact that I was uninspired didn't mean anything other than I was in alignment. And so often we take inspiration has two sides, right? It's the thing that you can't not do, and it's honoring, like, I just don't want to right now. Like, I have zero energy towards that,
Yeah. And so if you weren't aware of that guidance and you were more tuned into what you think you should do, and when you get engaged, you start planning a wedding, and that's what I should do. So if Cassie wasn't, like, if she was going down that path versus following her own intuition, then she would have ended up with plans, and then she would have ended up with got to cancel these plans, and that experience is more uncomfortable and things like that. So it's such a great example of how important it is to follow your inner guidance in each moment with whatever is going on in your life, because this is how it created an easier, more enjoyable path for her 6 months, a year later, versus life still would have been fine. Cassie still could have been happy and everything would have worked out, but the journey has unfolded more in her favor because she listened at the beginning.
Yes. And there's probably somebody I know listening who's like, and I followed and I pushed, like, not pushed, but I was like, I want to get this done. And has an amazing story of either how, their wedding kind of got done right before, or how they like actually got what they wanted because it somehow got impacted by quarantine. Right.
Yeah.
And it's all possible because it's all in alignment with what you want. And when you honor that, like, you're getting where you want.
Yes. I love it. Just to clarify, so if you had gotten engaged before the pandemic and you were really inspired to create a wedding, and then you had all these plans and all these things happen, and then it didn't turn out the way you thought it would, but you ended up having an experience that was actually better, all of that process was inspired too. Yeah. It's all good.
So good. It is good.
Okay. So do you want to start with that example that you were talking about in terms of that we were talking about in terms of I was like, hey, wait, is that inspired or not?
So if you've been listening for a while, and especially more recently, I've been talking about this property that I have that I bought on inspiration. We should probably go back to that. I bought on inspiration. Like, I had no idea. Even the day before, I was like, why am I doing this? But like, I couldn't not do it, even though I really kind of wanted to not do it. But it was all inspired. It randomly, it came up when I was playing cards with a friend, and my friend's like, hey, there's this like apartment complex for sale out here for this, and really the process started with that. And so it's been 2 years in the making, more than 2 years. It's probably been at 3 since I started looking at it, actually. And anyway, it's evolved so much in the last couple of weeks, just inspiration and ideas and seeing, and really it's a great testament to like, ooh, that would be cool, and letting it go. And then having the idea, the inspiration hit as to the how. And sometimes that's how it works. Like there's multiple facets of inspiration, right? There's like, ooh, that would be awesome inspiration. And then there is often the path, which could get confused with the how, but I would really start to use the word path. When when it's inspired, when it's like, oh, call that person, do this, do that, like that's the path. And so
the path of inspiration.
Yeah.
I like it.
And it's, taking you to that, what you want. And so we were talking, and I said, oh, I had this, I have a new idea that's actually like less than a week old that like is so cool and just like taking a lot of things into account and whatever. And so as I was working on this, like one day I was just playing and the inspiration popped into my head, like, oh, it would be so cool someday when I can say, or if I think I said if at the time, because I didn't know how it'd be possible. I'm just playing, right? It would be so cool if I can make as much in a month on this property as it cost me. Like someday, that would be awesome to make as much in a month as the whole property costs, right? And I just let it go, right? I was like, oh, that's super fun. Idea. And I just let it go. I'm like, yeah, that would be awesome. And instead of like, well, how would that happen? I did zero going down. Like, I think in those moments, you really do have like, it's a fork in the road. You can go down that how path. Well, how would that happen? I would have to do that. And you can get stuck in that loop. And, or you can go down this would be awesome. And just imagine like, oh, that would be a really cool story to just, and I just in my head, I practiced a couple times. Like I was only played with this for probably 5 minutes. So it said, like imagine myself telling the story of, this property used to make, or, I make as much, it brings in as much revenue in a month as I paid for it. And to just really be celebrating that and being in that space of this is what I've created, following inspiration and all these things. And a couple days later, I was sitting there and I was inspired to do some math. And I have some numbers to work with and just some hypotheticals. And I was just inspired like, oh, well, what would that be? And all of a sudden the number was there. I was like, that's $41,000 a month.
Yeah.
Like, that's as much as
yeah.
Yeah.
And then
I tied it back. I was like,
yeah.
There it is. Like when this property is making that, like it's right there. Like it's totally possible. And allowing that inspiration of the path, not the how, to come up is so powerful. And when I was telling Ginny the story, she goes, isn't that the how? Like, because it has to do.
Because I was like, you figured out. Yeah, I was like, Cass, but that's how you figured out how, you can figure out how it could happen. So now it's like another step of getting closer. And she's like, that's not how. So share the difference.
Yeah, there is a huge difference. The difference is like the way it feels. Like, and so Jenny, as we were talking before, for me, I have learned when I say like, I wonder what, and I do math, or I wonder what this number is, I wonder this, I know it's coming from inspiration. So even the fact that I did the calculation to make the connection in the number was inspired, which is how I know it was inspired. And the other way is I didn't go into like, oh, okay, I could have this many restaurants and this is how I'd have to do it and this is what's have to happen and this is how you get that number, and go down a rabbit hole of, well, like, how do you get more people to stop? Is it possible to get 10% versus 1% of this thing that I'm working with? And I didn't do any of that. I was just like, oh yeah, that's the number.
You can even feel the difference in energy when you're like asking those questions. You can feel it.
What's funny is I just came up with those right now, like imagining, okay, if I had wanted to figure that out, like what would I do? And so that's also how I know it's not the how, is that I haven't given any energy to even thinking about those questions, right? It's just all, oh yeah, that's possible. Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to enjoy like 10%. Like one day when 10% of the cars that drive by this place stop and enjoy, and then shifting it is a big thing, because what I do is stop and enjoy, like, ooh, there's a store and there's amazing places to eat and this is a place of connection, and I see people posting Instagram because we have all these cool art pieces to like post Instagram posts, you know, like being in the energy of what's happening, not like how it's going to happen, but how awesome it's going to be. Is another indication for me that I'm not trying to figure it out. I'm in like, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be awesome. This is going to be awesome. Did I explain it good enough?
Yeah. I think one of the things to point out too is, so you got this inspiration of this idea. Wouldn't that be cool to hit this number in a month? Cool. Okay. That feels fun. Played with it. And always, as you guys know, the energy is really light. It's fun. It's creative. It's exciting. Now, there was no, in that, so two parts. There was no, oh, well, how could I get there in that moment? Okay, so I think a really big part of inspiration and not going into the how is like really letting the idea be just an idea for a while. I don't think we are naturally pulled to the how in any way in the same moment we get the idea. The idea comes and it's just meant to be an idea, and let it build the experience, that kind of thing. And then even after Cass had let it go and then the idea came back, she wasn't like, okay, well, how could I get to that number? It was a totally different stream. And then it was like figuring different numbers, because Cassie likes to play with numbers. That feels good for her. and then it was like play with these numbers, and then bam, oh, there's the number. It wasn't trying to get to it. It wasn't like going backwards. It was like doing something totally different, and then the two came together. And that's another way you know it's not in the how. But the biggest thing I just want to make sure we highlight is it is the feeling behind the questions you're asking about this idea. If you are curious, and I know the women in my group get really good at this, like asking these questions of like, how does it feel? What might that look like? What's the experience? And those are all tuning into the energy of it and not in the how. So yeah, the biggest difference is the feeling of the questions you're asking.
Yes, the feeling of the questions you're asking, right? And so one way to identify, because you're like, well, how do I know how the questions feel? First of all, you pay attention to the questions, because we're taught to pay attention to the answers. And so part of
because we're operating analytically.
And so that's step one. Like I can always tell with a client, like I'm like, this question doesn't even feel like it's the question, like, you know, paying attention to how it feels to even ask the question, right? And if there's a question, like, and how many in a row, right? And if there's like more than 2 or 3, you're probably in the how.
Yeah.
But
I would agree.
If it doesn't feel fun to go like, oh, and then what would that be like? And what would that be like? And what would that be like? If that's not fun, you're not in inspiration. Like the questions you're asking, if they don't feel fun to ask and to answer, you're not in the lightness of inspiration. You're probably in the how.
Yeah. And one of the other important parts that we want to highlight here, do you remember what you said, Cass, about how inspiration is not... Do you remember?
I do, but I mean, I remember saying it. I also think you wrote it down. So if
I
you want to
didn't.
say
I
it,
didn't
I'm
write
like,
it
it's
down.
not coming right. Oh, you did it? How inspiration. Oh, I totally thought you were writing it down. How inspiration is not.
I remember it's about being attached to it.
Yeah. Don't be attached to inspiration. Yeah. So when we know, when we can. Go ahead.
Well, this is another way you know the difference. If you're howing or if this is inspired, is if you are attached to that idea happening. So if Cassie had that idea about this, getting this much money in a month, and she was like, yeah, and you can feel an attachment. You can be like, I need that to happen. It's like a grasping all of a sudden. And then she's immediately out of inspiration and into the how. And sometimes this happens so quickly. But this is one of the keys.
Yes.
Like you have to practice this feeling, and being able to, this was part of it too, being able to let go of that idea as soon as you switch out of inspiration. So it's super important for you guys to know first, okay, now, yeah, this idea feels fun. And then the instant it goes to, I need that to happen. When will it happen? How could that happen? Or you switch out of the feeling of fun and lightness of the idea, you got to let it go. You got to practice letting that idea go. Okay, now's my time to give it space. Okay, now I'm going to let that one go so that idea can stay inspired. So my relationship to that idea, vibrational relationship to that idea, stays in inspiration so that the path can unfold.
Yes. Like keeping it in that lightness and that energy is crucial for that path to unfold. Yeah. And stay out of the how. And if you stay in the lightness, you're automatically out of the how. And if you're asking if you're in the how, like you're probably in the how, because again, like that question feels, if you think about like, am I howing it? There's that question just energetically, when you say that, doesn't probably feel good. Unless I can think of an example where it's like you just kind of laugh like, oh, no, I'm not. Like this feels so good, right? There's an immediate like even lightness to like you can't wait to answer it. But the general question like, am I howing it, doesn't feel good. And so if that's coming up, you're probably out of inspiration. And that doesn't mean don't try and get back to it.
Yes.
Like just let go. I think that's weird, because then you're trying to figure out how to get back to it, right? Figure out how to get back to the feel good place. Like just let it go. Inspiration always comes back. Inspiration always comes around. And inspiration sometimes isn't for the end result, you know? It's for the possibility. It's for being able to play in the possibility. It's for being able to be like, oh yeah, that is totally possible to make as much in a month as I paid for that property. You know? That's happening and inevitable, that like, ooh, I could do that. That's possible. You can make 100% return a month.
That's one of the ways, too, is if you're being curious, how can, about this idea or the possibility. Cause that's when I was asking Cash, she's like, yeah, but I'm like wondering this. So for her, she knows anytime she's asking, I wonder what this would look like. And often I use what ifs I use what ifs a lot. What if it was like this or,
Ooh.
Yeah. And so go ahead.
You just reminded me, there was another story I shared with you. Like I've executed this. And so I also know, and I want to share this because you reminded me. I do know when I say like, I wonder. So one of the other stories that somebody had, an LOA person was like, weren't you howing it? Back when I was moving towards financial independence, I said, okay, I want a 1-bedroom condo that pays for the mortgage on a 2-bedroom condo. But the step before that was, I wonder if you could make enough on a 1-bedroom to pay for a 2-bedroom. And I went and I looked it up and I was like, oh, for sure. Like this place could have paid for this. This place could pay for this. Like, but it started in that wonder.
Yes.
So I just wanted to highlight that.
I feel like we're going to have a lot of wanderers this week. It's going to be good.
Yes.
I wonder what that job might look like. I wonder if that skill I have can be used anywhere else. I wonder if people meet walking on the sidewalk in the rain. I wonder, I'm just like, it's one of my favorite kind of ideas to play with. You were saying something else. Oh yeah, so staying in the wonder and curiosity. Yeah. Oh, I wanted to say, so as well as you start to learn your own difference of when you are in inspiration versus when you're in the how. Like when Cassie and I were talking about numbers, for her, numbers are really aligning. And for me, generally they're not. But I know sometimes they are. Sometimes like, oh, I wonder what that would look like. There it is again. I wonder. And
I thought about that when you said numbers too. I'm like, oh, I wonder what that is. Yep.
And so, but the key is for me, I pay close attention to when that feeling switches. So I'm like, oh, cool. And then it's like very slight. And it's just like, okay, this I'm done with this now. And I totally let it go. And I think practicing that ability to just let it go when you're done with it is you practicing staying in inspiration. So sometimes to give you a practical tool to use, practice letting go of your ideas once they don't feel fun. And you will get better at noticing inspiration, feeling it, and keeping it and staying in that place longer.
Yes. And I was trying to come up with 3 quick ways to do that. Like, so if it doesn't feel fun, get out. You're not in inspiration. If it starts to feel hard, get out. You're in inspiration. And if you don't want to in that moment, right? But you feel like you should, like, get out. Like, those are 3 things you can start to recognize. And when I say get out, I mean, stop focusing on it. Stop, just let that idea go and know that inspiration builds, and it can build for years, right? Just let it go, because it will come back, and it will be created so much quicker when you're in that energy of inspiration and out of the how.
It reminds me of like years ago when I was first inspired to, renovate an RV and live on the road and things like that. And I was looking up. I literally today can still feel how excited I was. I can picture where I was sitting and how I felt and doing different things. And I was having conversations. And I even reached out to like a schoolie conversion company, and we talked about that. And I was so excited. I was talking about it with everybody. And I was and then I started looking for ones, but my life situation was didn't really support that. I didn't know how that was gonna happen or how that would unfold. But I was very clear that I knew this feeling. So I know this is going to be a part of my life somehow. And so, fast forward a year and a half or 2 years, I'm not quite sure, when Lisa and I bought this house, and then we were going to convert the garage into a guest space, but that didn't turn out to be what we wanted. And so we're like, oh, we'll just get a camper. And then, so I wasn't even thinking about any of these things. Bam, that happened, sitting, and I'm like, then I had the inspiration one day, oh my gosh, I can renovate the camper in our driveway right now. And then now that's a path, and I can feel all of these pieces falling into place. And I know with certainty that it started a couple years ago when I was feeling the energy of that thing. And now I haven't tried to do any of the things, and I still know, and I can feel now the energy of whatever this experience is growing. I still do want to live on the road and have that experience, and I know it's coming, and this is a part of it. So it's so cool.
Yeah, it is awesome.
But there was as soon as I had any like, oh, I should go look at this, or how would that happen, I was, stopped. Nope, not going there.
I remember. Yeah. Right? Not going there. And and you were right. Like there was no trying to figure out how it would happen.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't, I don't know what the word is, practical or possible or whatever in that moment. Things needed to shift around a bit, but you still played with the energy. And I firmly believe, my first experience with that, like sort of what you're saying, was writing my first book. Prior to like writing the actual book that I actually first published way before the last 5 years, I had wanted to write this one book, and I had looked up all of the information, and then I never wrote the book. Yes. But then I really quickly needed to write that other book to have it when I was going to be speaking. And so I already had I knew it. All I had to do was write it because I'd already done all that.
I love how life sets you up that way.
I know, it's so awesome.
Yeah. I think one of the things too, if there's like, sometimes it's easier to do it with these things that aren't so, you know, important or central or forefront, like, hey, playing with this house idea, or yeah, sure, playing with an RV idea. For staying in tune with inspiration and kind of more the day-to-day practical things, just start where you can, and let it build, let yourself build momentum and get practice following inspiration. So when there's something that you don't feel like doing and you're like, well, this doesn't feel inspired, but I can't just not do it. Like, don't let that be the place where you start. Like, let that one go and then start somewhere else, and build up this belief and step into being the person who, you know, follows inspired action more and more and more and more until it can translate into more and more areas in your life.
Absolutely. If you want a place to, I think a great practical place to start is cleaning your house.
Yeah.
Because so often that becomes like I have to do it now. But if you can just all right, I'm going to be inspired, and you can practice with cleaning your house. And I think everyone's actually had this experience. They just forget or convince themselves not. You know that when you're quote unquote inspired to clean the house, it takes you like an hour.
And it's fun.
When you're not, it takes 5 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's fun and it's easy and it doesn't feel like anything, you know? Yeah.
Totally. Anything else, Cass, you want to wrap up with?
Just keep practicing. It gets bigger and bigger, and it gets with bigger things. Like even the story I'm talking about today is not little, you know, it's a big decision, and it just it keeps growing. The need to follow and trust your inspiration and be able to both push on the gas and let off the gas just gets to be a bigger and bigger skill that you need, and you just develop it in a deeper way. So just keep practicing every chance you get.
Yeah. And even if that just starts with an awareness, so to know oh, that's inspiration. Okay, now it's not. Oh, that's inspiration. Okay, now it's not. That's inspired. So you start to just observe it first and get really familiar with the difference between howling and inspired thoughts. And then you put yourself in the position to choose, make a better choice.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, have a great week, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Go be awesome.
Thank you for joining us on the Manifest It Now show, where you learn how to leverage the law of attraction to manifest your dreams. Now that you're inspired, share the love and review us on iTunes. While you're there, remember to subscribe.